All right, good morning, everyone. We are on the record on case CR 22-21-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. We're continuing with evidence in the case. Ms. Gibb is on the stand, having been previously sworn yesterday. This is continuing cross-examination. The court notes the presence of all 18 jurors properly seated as well, and the court will also indicate that each of the jurors has completed their juror affirmation for the morning. So thank you all for following the court's continuing admonition and instruction in that regard. With that, if we're ready to continue with cross, you can go ahead and take the podium, Mr. Pryor, and we'll continue.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Before you begin your cross, Mr. Pryor, I'll just inquire of the witness. First, I'll remind you, you are still under oath, Ms. Gibb, and I'll ask, did you review anything?
Ms. Gibb, I want to go over just a couple of preliminary matters if we could first to start there, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
The first thing is you never did provide a hair sample to any law enforcement agency in this case. Is that right?
Correct.
You never turned over your phone or was requested to turn over your phone to any law enforcement agency. Is that correct?
Correct.
You were never requested or did turn over any email or any email accounts or social media accounts to law enforcement at their request. Is that correct?
Correct.
You did, however, in 2021, provide a DNA sample to a Rexburg or a Fremont County officer a couple of years after this alleged incident. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about an organization that I think you're affiliated with called Seven Gatherers. Are you familiar with the term Seven Gatherers?
I'm not.
You're not. Okay. Initially, there was some discussion about Chad and Lori. Obviously, we're getting very close during the early parts of January and February of 2019. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And at any time, did they talk about having a plan to spend their lives together?
At some point they did.
Do you recall when that was?
I would say they kind of talked about it in the beginning of the relationship about being part of the head of the 144,000. I would say within a month or two. I'm not sure exactly the day.
Well, I appreciate the religious references, but I was talking more on a personal note that they were planning if when Tammy passed away that they were going to spend their lives together. Did you ever overhear that kind of a discussion?
I guess kind of. Yeah.
And on that note, we previously touched on the fact that Chad and a number of his speaking engagements prior to even knowing Lori Vallow spoke about his, and I want to use the right word, his premonitions, I guess, about Tammy not having a long life. Recall that?
Yes.
And you were present for at least a couple of those, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So it was also common knowledge that Chad had openly discussed the fact that he felt his wife was not going to live long well before he ever met Lori Vallow, right?
Right.
Okay. And in fact, you touched on that when you had one of your text message conversations with Prosecutor Wood. You had mentioned that, do you recall having that discussion?
It's possible, but I don't recall it.
Okay. Is it possible that you told him that Chad made it known to a lot of his close friends that he knew that Tammy wasn't going to live long?
Yes.
Okay. And we don't need to go into that. Now, at no time did Chad Daybell ever tell you that he intended to do harm to Tammy Daybell, did he?
Correct.
And in fact, at no time did Chad Daybell ever tell you that he intended to do harm to J.J. Vallow or Tylee Ryan.
Correct.
Okay. So this plan that they had to spend their lives together would only have occurred if either Chad divorced Tammy Daybell or that if the premonition was accurate and Tammy had passed away, that they would be able to spend their lives together, right?
Yes.
Okay. I I want to go back to the discussion in late November when you claim that you got a call from Chad about not wanting to talk to the police, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, to put a little foundation in this, on the weekend of the 19th through the 23rd, you were at at Lori Vallow's townhome that night, right?
Are you talking about November?
September of
Oh.
19th through the 23rd, you were at,
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
just putting a little foundation in place. You were at there, and then part of that was to go to a seminar. There were a number of other things as well, right?
Correct.
Okay. So in your eyes, that was the last time that you saw JJ Vallow alive, right?
Correct.
Okay. And did you later come to learn that the prosecutors in the state's allegations are that JJ was murdered at or around the time that you folks were there for that podcast?
I wasn't aware of that.
You've never become aware of that?
I wasn't aware that they were murdered. I knew that the word was missing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And subsequently, you've learned that the allegation is that there's an alleged murder that took place at or around the weekend of the 19th through the 23rd. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, your testimony is that Chad Daybell called you and said, don't talk to the police. Is that what it
Correct.
was on the 19th? And do you remember the date of that?
I remember it was 2 or 3 days before Thanksgiving. So it was in November, whenever the Thanksgiving was.
And would the 25th of November ring a bell, possibly?
It's possible.
Okay. Now, prior to November 23rd, did you have any phone conversations with Lori Vallow, giving you a warning that Chad was going to call you?
No.
Okay. But when Chad spoke with you at that time, he did tell you that Lori was going to get a hold of you afterwards, right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, Miss Gibb, isn't it true that on November 25th of 2019, Chad Daybell contacted you and specifically asked you, where is JJ Vallow?
And no.
And yet, during that conversation, he told you that Lori was going to be contacting you, right?
That's right.
And then after that, did Lori contact you?
She did.
And what was the discussion, Miss Gibb?
She told me that the police had come asking for JJ and that she had told them that I had JJ and that I needed to go to a movie called Frozen, take pictures.
Okay.
Back.
So your denial of the fact that Chad called you, you're denying the fact that Chad Daybell called you on the 25th, seeking out information as to where JJ Vallow is. You're denying that, right?
Yes.
Okay. But yet Lori Vallow calls you back
Mhm.
after Chad Daybell and says, I need you to cover for me and tell the police that you have JJ Vallow, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But Mr. Daybell also during that conversation said, you're going to hear from Lori.
Correct.
Did Lori ever tell you, I told Chad that JJ was with you and go along with this story?
I don't believe so.
Okay, but you don't know for sure, do you?
I can't remember. I can't recall all the words I said to
Oh,
her.
okay. All right. Okay, fair enough. And then was it that day or was it the next day that the police officers called you?
It was the same day.
Okay. And at that point, you told them that you had JJ Vallow, didn't you?
Not initially, but by the end of the day, yes.
Okay. You basically told them during that day that you had possession of JJ Vallow. Is that right?
I said I had him and then I didn't have him.
Well, no,
That's
we're
the
going to
words
go
I
one at a
used.
time,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Okay.
At the first opportunity to have discussion with the police and discuss where JJ Vallow was, you told them you had JJ Vallow.
Correct.
Okay. So I'm having some difficulty with the fact that Chad's trying to cover something up, and yet after a phone call from Lori discussing to tell them that you had JJ, you suddenly go along and say, yes, I had JJ Vallow.
Or objection, this is a narrative. I'd ask to strike.
Sustained.
All right. And then at some point subsequent to that point, you decided to tell the police, well, I lied about this because I was having an emotional issue with how to deal with this, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And how long did it take you for you to have that emotional reflection to go back to the police and tell them, oh, I'm not going along with this lie that Lori and I came up with?
A few weeks.
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the evidence.
Well, it's already been answered by the witness. It's late, overruled.
Okay. A couple of weeks it took you to decide that I better tell the police the truth, right?
Right.
Okay. And then at some point you said that you decided to go and, excuse me, you decided to go to the police to let them know what really happened. And that was the 2 weeks later, right?
However many times it was, how many weeks, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh. And then at some point yesterday, you testified that without talking to any law enforcement, you then took it upon yourself to record the conversation between you and Lori, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, Ms. Gibb, and that occurred on about the 8th of December of 2019. Does that sound correct?
If you're referring to the recording, yes.
Recording, yes.
Mhm.
Does that sound correct?
Yes.
Okay.